how did you? What's your sort of top line takeaways from the fixture today, mate?
Yeah, I think it's not too bad a fixture at all. We've gone through it. There's sort of a prickly sort of point there later in the year where we've got a Perth Cairns trip. So we'll be prepared for that. I generally break up a season into quarters so we can take bite sizes out of them. And the last quarter, we've got 2 home games, 5 on the road, 2 of them in Perth. So we'll prepare to get ready for that. And that could actually be an advantage to us, getting ready to play on the road and play well going into the playoffs anyway.
You take just 10 cents. Thank you, perfect.
Yep.
Do you, looking at it from a non-basketball point of view, look at it and go, that probably ticks a lot of commercial boxes for us, I imagine?
Yeah, because, we want to be able to get families out, so weekend games are going to be good, and also not having them real close together where people will pick and choose is good. So I think from that standpoint, the commercial people are really happy with that, so that ticks a good box.
I feel like the travel schedule got a bit of flack last year from some teams.
Are
you more comfortable with perhaps a little?
Yeah, and it's part of something you've got to take on. We're a big country. It'd be great if we were Europe and everything's small and you're on buses. And it's probably just that one where we've got Perth Friday night, Cairns on the Sunday, and we're working through what we're going to do to be able to navigate that. But otherwise, I think we've got to be big boys and get through that as well. And I think it's your mental preparation going into it to say it is what it is and just prepare and get ready for it and not use it as excuse.
And in terms of the roster, how do you feel that's sort of coming to?
Yeah, I think it's coming together the way that, Scotty wanted it to be, getting the local talent back in. I think that's really important because we want to play an Adelaide style of basketball again. You really want South Australian kids. And when I say kids, they're men. But we really need that because they're going to embrace the culture that we want to deliver here. We've just, want to fill this with a couple of imports now and we're getting closer. But that's a good process too to go through to ensure that we're getting the right ones.
We were talking about Zach Levine and DeMar DeRozan's a restricted free agent, but
yeah.
What are you looking for in those imports?
Yeah, so look, positional-wise, we're looking for a playmaking one, a guy that can score, but ultimately get the ball to DJ and Ice in the right spots as well. We've got the best off-guard and best 5-man in the league, in my opinion, and I think at many others. So it's someone that's going to be able to control the tempo of the game. We're also looking at a stretch 4, someone that can also play some 5 when we want to go some small ball. So we have, a short list, probably about 3 in each, but we also want to then, really drill down and find out the character of this person. So instead of saying, yep, that's all great stats, let's just bring them in, we want to build this culture, so we need the right imports to come in and add value because I've got 2 Australian pillars in DJ and Isaac, who I've invested heavily into, and we're going to ride with them. So we want them to have this complementary import selection.
Is that maybe a lesson from the past? I know you weren't at the helm, but a lesson of the past and maybe not necessarily doing the proper due diligence with some of them?
Yeah, look, we've gone a different process this year because I like to have process. I don't like process, overcoming outcome. But it's good to have there for checks and balances. And I'm not sure what sort of went through before, but I'd like to do a lot of due diligence and ask the questions why and really drive down and dig down and find out why. So yeah, we are doing it differently. For every player that I, assign, there's a 12-page deck that I do which presents the management and the ownership to say this is why we want to go with this person, any risks that are associated, how we're going to extract value. That's what we do now rather than just looking at names and going, they look pretty good, how do we get them involved? We do a lot more, which can take up to a week sometimes to get all that information collated. But I believe if we're going to invest that money, let's do it properly and know what we're going to get.
Do you feel an extra pressure to nail those import spots given we've got a bit of a recent history of swinging and missing on them?
Yeah, I do, and it's an important piece. And I think that's why we bring in this process to say, let's ask the questions to why we'd go down this road. And I know that it's quite often, especially as you get later on, people can panic a little bit and say, oh, he's available, let's just get him, yeah? We're not going to stand for that. We're going to dare to dream and go after the people that we want because they're going to fit our key components and bring to our club what we want. So, yeah, there's pressure, but there should be pressure too because that's associated with it. So I take that on board.
So is that pressure then to get it done early as well, get those deals done early?
Nah, get it done right. Get it done right. That's the key to it. He's getting it right. The players we're talking about are very good players. and they don't go cheap, and they're in demand. So you've got to go through and go that process, and they're not going to make a quick, silly decision themselves and say, well, this is where I'm going to go. So we go through that process. We talk to the player a lot. We talk to the agent a lot. We talk to previous coaches a lot, really to try and get that information. Do they really want to come to Adelaide? We don't want a culture, and from an outside looking in last year, I felt the culture was more transactional rather than a buy-in. And when you've got a transactional culture, it's hard. It's really hard to build something.
Is the salary cap system and the way that you can pay players in different contracts in the NBL is so complicated? Is Adelaide in a position to give premium imports the money that they would command elsewhere?
Yeah. Well, when I mean command elsewhere, in Australia, yes. We can't against Eurasia, Japan's and China's, but we're a nice place to live as well. So that's why we want to get to the player and say, hey, Henley Beach is amazing, Beijing probably not so. So that's where our point is. Do we have the money to get good imports? Yes. And I'd rather go quality imports over quantity imports. We've got a 1 and a 4. I've got a third import up my sleeve in case we have any sort of major injury during the year that I can pull that lever. But also, the most important thing here is when I look at last year's roster, there was 12 guys on it because we had an X-star, and all 12 could realistically play 12, 13, 14 minutes a game. Most probably thought they could play 20. There's not enough minutes, right? So what you have disengagement at the end of the bench. You've got to have role players, right? People that come in and go, that is my role at 6 minutes a game, and that's what I do for the team. Yeah, so I don't want to go too top heavy and having all these top imports when I've already got a great off guard and 5 men. They're like imports, so that's the difference.
Is that where you get the benefit from having young blokes coming up that are happy to play?
Absolutely, exactly. Yep. You look at your 10th and your 11th man, they're starting their journey. Rigoni and Ben Gristic, they're starting their NBL journey. They know they've got a pathway, and we tick that off over the next 24, 36 months to them getting really engaged and being in a rotation. Okay? So that's what you need. If you've got a guy that is a 10-year veteran sitting at the end of the bench, they say to you in June, July, August, yeah, I'm happy to play only 2 minutes and not play. They tell you, but by December, they're angry. And you don't want that cancer at the end of the bench, because it doesn't work well. As a young guy, doesn't know what he's missing out on yet. The 10-year veteran is competitive and he wants to be out there, and they end up saying, why am I training every day and not playing? So that's why I've been very systematic and going, what's my A, what's my B group, what's my C group, and how we're going to structure that.
The next stars you mentioned before, is that something that we're exploring this year at the club?
We're not, and the reason is, I should say, we need to build our culture. We need to get our identity back, and that's why Scott's here. Scott's going to drive that because he's a club legend. What we need is people that want to buy in. So this year, everyone's putting in. No one's taking out. Unfortunately, with the next star for us this year, it's someone that comes in and goes, I'm only going to be here generally a year. I want to use you to get to the NBA. There's a lot of withdrawing, not much depositing. And that's hard when we're all sitting at one table and you've sort of got someone that's almost an island from a cultural standpoint, saying, well, I'm not in it with you guys. They can say all the things you want to hear, but the actions speak louder than words. So it's not for us right now. And it's about building so we can get consistency. My aim is, how do we build a consistent top 4 team? How do you become a Melbourne United that's always going to be there? And I think that's a really good case for us.
That South Australian call, then I guess the hope with that is that you have player retention
yes.
as a result of that as well, because that's
yep.
been an issue.
It has. And then when you're having so much movement, I understand there's always going to be some movement, but when it's as much as we've had, again, that's hard to build a culture because you've got more new people coming in than existing. So they're actually determining what the culture is, but you've got 5 or 6 guys that aren't together coming in and saying, this is what we want to be. And again, you get into that transactional. So it's about, how do we build something? How do you build a platform? I call it the wedding cake. And as you tier, it gives you a basis. And that's what we're building, that basis at the moment. Scott knows what he wants to do. He's going to be great leading this club and putting us into the future. We need stability. And the reason, Scott is here is to develop and drive that South Australian style of basketball.
The last one on basketball, you mentioned, you sort of talked about there, but the 36ers basketball, the way that you want to, what is 36ers basketball?
If you look at it offensively, and we use basketball terminology, we're going to play with pace and space, right? That's what we're going to do, and that's the modern game. When we talk about what is going to be our identity, it is going to be that when you come and watch the Sixers play, we are going to leave it all on the floor. And that's why we need the South Australian kids, because they know their mum and dad live in the city, their aunties live in the city, right? They walk the streets, they've got that identity. Even though I'm from Sydney, I'm now a South Australian, and I understand the importance of having that homegrown versus, you know, constantly getting people from Melbourne or Sydney to come in because they can't understand the culture of Australia, South Australia, of Adelaide. So that is going to be, we're going to be mongrels, right? We are going to be ruthless. We've got our top guys that are going to be able to score and give us the points, and we're going to have the people coming off the bench like Nick Marshall, Sunday Detch, Gristy could get time. They're going to be coming in, Alex Starling, and they're going to rip in. And that's what we're going to be known for, and that's what teams are going to come up against.